The Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia was a communist nation that was established after World War II. Josip Tito ruled Yugoslavia with an iron hand for nearly 3 decades. Tito's death in 1980 and the end of the Cold War led to rising ethnic tensions and financial problems. In 1991, Slovenia and Croatia broke off from Yugoslavia and left the Federation. Slovenia's departure was relatively peaceful. However, Croatia's exit led to a bloody civil war due to the ethnic Serbs living in Croatia who wanted to create an independent nation within Croatia. The JNA, that is Yugoslavia's army, supported the Croatian Serbs, resulting in a 4-month civil war with thousands of casualties. In 1992, the nation of Bosnia and Herzegovina also began exploring independence. Bosnia's president, Alija Izetbegović, finally made this decision to leave the federation when he learned of the RAM Plan, a Serbian takeover scheme. Muslim Bosniaks and Catholic Bosnian Croats voted for independence, while Orthodox Bosnian Serbs were opposed to this. Bosnian Serbs wanted to create an independent nation within Bosnia and started with the conquest and ethnic cleansing of Bijeljina near the Serbian border. And that's where we're going to pick up today. The first week of April 1992 was a terrible time for Bosnia as Serbian forces captured Bijeljina and Kupreš. Serbian forces also began shelling the capital city of Sarajevo. Sarajevo would remain under siege for the next 3 years. Yugoslavia's army, that is, the JNA, was a full-fledged military and used its intelligence services to support the Bosnian Serbs against the Bosnian Muslims, or the Bosniaks. To make matters even worse for the Bosniaks, the United Nations Security Council had voted to impose an arms embargo on Yugoslavia. This meant the Bosniaks had to make do with light arms like pistols, guns, and rifles, while the Serbs had armored vehicles, tanks, artillery, and much, much more. It seems bizarre, at least it does to me, that the United Nations would deliberately handicap a civilian population like this. However, the following quote from writer and historian Taylor Branch may shed some light on why the UN allowed this to happen. This quote comes from Taylor Branch's 2009 book, The Clinton Tapes: Wrestling History with the President. Clinton said U.S. allies in Europe blocked proposals to adjust or remove the embargo. They justified their opposition on plausible humanitarian grounds, arguing that more arms would only fuel the bloodshed. But privately, said the president, key allies objected that an independent Bosnia would be unnatural as the only Muslim nation in Europe. François Mitterrand of France had been especially blunt in saying that Bosnia did not belong, and that British officials also spoke of a painful but realistic restoration of Christian Europe. There were many journalists covering the war, and they were primarily stationed in Sarajevo, where they faced similar dangers to the civilians living there. Sarajevo, as we mentioned earlier, was under siege by the Bosnian Serbs, resulting in the disruption of municipal services such as heating, water, and electricity. Several buildings, including hospitals and government structures, had been heavily damaged, and fires raged uncontrollably throughout the city. In addition to this, Bosniak and Serbian militants fought gun battles in the streets. The Bosniaks drove the Serbs out of certain parts of Sarajevo, but Serbs controlled the surrounding mountains, and this allowed them to bombard the city with artillery. Snipers from both sides occupied positions and burned down buildings, creating sniper alleys where anyone was liable to be shot. Civilians only dared to go outside in the early mornings when the mist obscured the snipers' vision. Serbian snipers were also positioned in the hills around Sarajevo, giving them an additional advantage. Besides Sarajevo, other parts of Bosnia were also in turmoil, with Serbian forces capturing and ethnically cleansing several cities along the Drina and Sava rivers. Within weeks of Bosnia declaring independence, nearly 15,000 Bosniaks were killed. Nonetheless, despite being disadvantaged by the embargo, the Bosniaks continued to fight back, and a joint Bosniak-Croat offensive reversed Serbian gains in northern and central Bosnia. Russia's foreign minister was able to negotiate a temporary ceasefire in Sarajevo, and this allowed civilians to gather food and supplies. However, 3 days later, Serbian artillery launched mortar shells into Sarajevo, killing 16 people in a bread line, and then, when emergency personnel rushed to save those victims, they were forced back by sniper fire. This carnage was broadcast across the world, leading the United Nations to slap sanctions on Yugoslavia on May 30th, 1992. These sanctions cut off Serbia's access to oil and international trade, froze their foreign assets, and shut down Serbia's airport. Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic criticized the sanctions, but he still defended his support for the Bosnian Serb rebels by stating, "This is the price we have to pay because we're helping Serbs outside of Serbia." Tensions between the Bosniaks and their Croatian allies began to grow, eventually turning into an all-out war by the autumn of 1992. Much of the conflict between the Bosniaks and the Croats occurred in Herzegovina, a region with a large Croatian population bordering southern Croatia. Bosnian Croats in Herzegovina wanted to join with Croatia, which started the conflict with the Bosniaks. There were some people who believed that Croatian President Franjo Tudjman, along with Slobodan Milosevic, had a secret agreement to divide Bosnia between them. In fact, Bosnian President Alija Izetbegovic believed this claim to be true. Now, the Bosnian Muslims were fighting a two-front war against two better-equipped enemies. The Bosnian government was stretched thin as they tried to defend a 600-mile front line with limited resources. The Bosnian government made the difficult decision to focus on Sarajevo and neglect Herzegovina in the south. They had no choice to do this as they were under severe resource constraints. During this fighting, Croatian forces advanced on Mostar in southern Bosnia. But the local Bosniaks in Mostar valiantly defended the city even though all they had were light arms. Since they were unable to dislodge the Bosniak defenders, the Croatian forces decided to instead destroy the historic Mostar Bridge in retaliation. This bridge was nearly 500 years old and had been built during the Ottoman era.